Oh, I need to stop sharing for just a second. Sorry. It's a little funky uh, when you're sharing your screen on Zoom and you also have notes in a separate app. You're it's a little tricky to do, so you have to do a bit of a workaround because the when you share on Zoom, it takes over the whole screen.
Hmm.
So I just had to create my little workaround, which I've done, and now back to here.
If you don't mind, Gable, note that Evelyn de Morgan was showing at the Grosvenor in the very show that Ruskin uh, made such a barked so loudly at. Gabe,
Sorry. Yeah.
if you don't mind, I'll mention the fact that
Oh,
Evelyn
yeah, yeah,
did
of
that
course.
just that show. I didn't realize that actually.
Yeah, yeah. I just discovered that she had shown on the opening of the Grosvenor, which is
Mhm.
when summer of 1877, which is when
Yeah,
the incident occurred.
yeah, it's great.
As we've talked, Ruskin had really gone there to see uh, Burne Jones's work.
Oops. Shoot. Sorry. There we go.
Tyson, I suggest waiting a few minutes or so because we
Sure.
usually get just people coming in at the last minute. So give them a
Gabe, are you able to admit them
yes, yes,
while I'm talking?
yes.
Okay, great. I may reach the limits of my multitasking capabilities otherwise.
It's all about activating the third arm.
Ah. Well, Gabe, how about we go ahead and start and you just let
Yeah,
people in as they come
yes,
in?
perfect.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out online for our last Ruskin Art Club event of the spring. I just found out the solstice is tomorrow. So today is the last day of spring, technically. My name's Tyson Gaskill. I am the current president of this organization, which is Los Angeles's oldest social club. We've been in existence since 1888, right around the time of the people and events that our speaker today will be discussing. We host many events throughout the year that take Ruskin's thoughts and writings as a point of departure for exploring some of the larger issues facing society today. Now, before I introduce him, I'd like to see a show of hands for how many people have heard of James Whistler. I'm assuming I'm gonna see a bunch of hands here. People who've heard of James Whistler, the artist. Yeah, okay, I see a few. All right. I expected that. Now, how many here have heard of Evelyn de Morgan? Do I see any hands from anyone? Oh, we've got at least one, maybe two. Okay, we've got a couple people. All right, that surprises me. All right, I worked at the Getty Museum for 10 years. I have an art history degree. She's new to me, and but this is a delight and a surprise that to find out new things about new people. Um, so our speaker today is my fellow Ruskin board member, Stuart Denenberg, the co-owner with his wife Beverly, who is here with us tonight as well, of Denenberg Fine Arts Gallery in Beverly Hills. I highly recommend to everyone the recent podcast interview, which our executive director, Gabriel Meyer, conducted with the two of them about their history in the art trade. They've been immersed in the artistic scene here in Southern California and on the East Coast for many decades. And they have some amazing stories that they tell on the podcast. So I do hope you get a chance to listen to that. It's easily accessible from the top of our homepage. So the invitation for tonight's event, Stuart described himself as a marchand amateur. And again, I had to look that up because I did not know what that meant. It means an art dealer who actively forms a collection of their own. Stuart and Beverly are constantly surprising us with their finds. The other year, they managed to come across a delightful sculpture of John Ruskin by Gutzon Borglum, who famously created a little, what do you call that? It's a minor environmental art, I believe it's called. It's Mount Rushmore, somewhere in the Midwest. A bunch of other minor projects along those lines. So they donated to our Ruskin Art Club. And if you stopped by our booth last year at the LA Times Festival of Books, you would have definitely seen him, as well as Stuart and Beverly. But enough from me. Let's hear it from Stuart.
Thank you, Tyson. You're terrific, and we so enjoy being on the board with you. And all the years that we've been involved with the Ruskin Club have been remarkable. Talking about my career briefly as an introduction to the conversation this evening, or the discussion this evening, in a career that began in Boston some 60 years ago, hard to believe, with a gallery showing original graphics and prints and drawings, graphic art. I've been very privileged to buy and sell and own any number of wonderful works of art. And in Boston, it was a really great privilege, a further privilege to know, admire, and enjoy the friendship of four great Boston curators, Agnes Mongan, Conrad Oberhuber, and Marjorie Cohn at the Fogg Museum at Harvard, and Eleanor Sayer at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. I had been appraising donations of prints and drawings to the museums, both museums, for some time. And when Agnes Mongan's 80th birthday came along, I became a donor. Beverly and I actually donated a mid-17th century Italian Renaissance architectural drawing in her honor. She asked me where I had come across it. And I replied, it was one of 100 sheets I had acquired in Rome the very year I opened the so-called Tragos Gallery in 1965. Ah, she exclaimed, you have a knack for trouvaille. And I asked her what that meant. The word trouvaille has the meaning of found treasure or lucky discovery. And it has kind of defined my trajectory as a marchand amateur, something that Tyson just discussed. Beverly and I both buy and sell works of art, but we collect them. We love them very much, and we've tried to avoid that commercial dog and pony show that the shift from the art world to the art market that has so obviously taken place in a way since the beginning of the 21st century with a vengeance. And unlike most of my colleagues, I've remained exceptionally eclectic and open to opportunities as they present themselves, a little skeptical about becoming even narrowly focused on valid genres, periods, media in fine art. And indeed, the openness, anecdotally, something might be amusing. On the way from San Francisco to Los Angeles, I got out of the car with Beverly, got out of the car for a stretch. And I've always been a mineral collector and lover. And I noticed something shiny on the ground, picked it up, put it in the car, and off we went back home. And years go by, and one of the things we were asked to do was to sell a collection of 100 pieces of pre-Columbian gold that had been collected by a man who owned a coffee plantation in Costa Rica, and had shown these things at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, where he lived full-time, Charles Craig Jr. The man we needed to have a an analysis of the gold content of these in order to aid in the authentication of the work, because these things, gold doesn't decay, and then the facture of them is not that difficult. It was quite a project, but it turned out that 90% of the work was right. Meanwhile, I engaged a jeweler to come and test the gold content. And while he was here, I said, might as well have him test that piece of fool's gold I picked up on the highway. What the heck? Turned out to be a piece of 20 karat gold ore that had fallen off the truck, obviously. But I want to share two recent trouvailles tonight, two lucky discoveries, three lucky discoveries, two of a group of 10 very rare signed original photographs, silver gelatin photographs commissioned by James McNeill Whistler of paintings that were shown in 1892 at the Goupil Gallery and accompanied by a booklet that he organized himself. The booklet itself, the photographs, excessively rare. And the second trouvaille will be a very rare and magnificent drawing in 22 karat gold by Evelyn de Morgan, one of only 17 such drawings. Yeah, one of only 17 such drawings known. In fact, the other drawings that are in gold are mostly in the foundation that she started. And when she passed away, she organized that. So it's interesting that the photographs, the booklet, and the drawing were all done in the same year, 1893, and they all are directly related during the lifetime of John Ruskin to the eminent art critic and sage whose influence and ideas were so pervasive in the 19th century. So to begin, in Ruskin's periodical Force Clavigira on July 2nd, 1877, he published a paragraph about a show about a Whistler painting he had seen in an exhibition he had seen at the Grosvenor Gallery. And again, a coincidence, a resonance. Evelyn de Morgan herself was showing for the first time in the Grosvenor Gallery show of 1877. Well, Ruskin described Whistler's painting, The Nocturne in Black and Gold, The Rocket Falling. If we could have that slide up, please, Tyson. Yep, there it is. And I will actually show you the actual physical for sense of scale. This is the actual photograph, and this is a pencil signature of Whistler. Unusual because William Edward Gray did the photograph. This is tipped onto this mount. The mount was selected by Whistler for the color. Whistler very carefully went over every single proof in the suite of actually 24 photographs, of which I now own 10. I'm going to show you two tonight. But when Ruskin saw that nocturne, he wrote the following and published it. For Mr. Whistler's own sake, no less than for the protection of the purchaser, Sir Coutts Lindsay, ought not to have admitted works into the gallery in which the ill-educated conceit of the artist so nearly approached the aspect of willful imposture. I have seen and heard much of Cockney impudence before now, but never expected to hear a coxcomb ask 200 guineas for flinging a pot of paint in the public's face. Well, Whistler sued Ruskin for libel, quite famously, and a court trial took place in November 1877. It was a Pyrrhic victory. Whistler won. He was awarded a penny in damages, but it was an enormously costly lawsuit, and it drove him into bankruptcy. Now, although he had produced the first of these painted nocturnes at the end of the 1860s, intending them to capture a poetic mood of pictorial and musical harmony, now we highly regard them and treasure them. The approach was to hold his attention for a decade, but it was a style the British press and public actually referred to pejoratively as Impressionism, well before the advent of French Impressionism. With difficulty, Whistler went on to great fame and success, became president of the Society of British Artists from 1886 to 1888, and then in 1892, the Goupil Gallery in London, which I mentioned earlier, arranged a successful solo loan exhibition of his work, 24 paintings. Whistler took it on himself to engage William Edward Gray to document this exhibition with the fine original silver-toned photographs I show you. I show you the one of the Nocturne in black and gold, rockets falling. That is the painting that Ruskin so abjured. The set of 24 photographs were actually an edition of only 40, of which very few survive. And only a few of them, maybe 30 of them, were fully signed, as Whistler, together with his very famous butterfly insignia. If you want to have the next slide, I'll show you that butterfly insignia. And Whistler placed it on his paintings, his drawings, and his prints. If they were very exceptional impressions, he would keep a little tab under the dry point or etching and sign it in a tiny butterfly. So you know you have a great Whistler impression when the thing is signed on the tab, as we say. In a master's thesis at the City University of New York, Hiroki Suda studied Whistler's relationship to photography and closely examined this project of 24 pictures. And curiously enough, Whistler himself had often sat as a photographer's model since the age of 10, and even sat for Degas, who, as we know, was a serious amateur photographer. Whistler would have known that Degas' attitude toward photography was driven by his artistic interest in the medium itself, and he must have been interested, of course, in Degas' work as a fellow artist. In an undated letter to Whistler, Degas wrote, "I see, my dear Whistler, you are eager to see the proofs, however mediocre, and I'm sending them to you so that you won't climb all the way to Montmartre. And you, the model, will you be free Tuesday or Wednesday?" So the album that Whistler produced, Nocturne Marine Chevalier pieces, was a carefully produced portfolio. Whistler had experience publishing sets of etchings and catalogs and books by this time, but this was his first and only publication exclusively devoted to photographs. He lived in Paris, away from London, where the album was published, and his frequent correspondence with D.C. Thomson, who served as his publisher, shows that Whistler was greatly involved with every aspect of production. He was particular about the quality of the photographs, as well as the whole design of the album, while trying to make an aesthetic concept come to fruition. The date of the publication coincides with the time when Whistler began to express appreciation for artistic photographs. And this is the most comprehensive survey of photographs of Whistler's paintings and of Whistler, we can call them Whistler's photographs. He wrote to Thomson, opposite each painting, the extracts, he means the comments that I have already collected. Perfect. That's the real Whistler album, if you like, and moreover, the only text I could tolerate, for I will not have myself presented by anyone, or excused, or explained. The whole thing is perfect, but begin with the best photographer. So the order was placed for a portfolio of so-called orthochromatic photographs. Now, by the use of that word, Whistler may have wanted to indicate a special interest in tonality. If you know Whistler's work, you know how relevant that term is. The actual photographs were albumin silver prints made from wet glass plate negatives, a very common photographic process in the late 19th century. Whistler was particular about every aspect of the publication, examining every single proof of the photographs and commenting on every single proof in terms of its tonality, its color, its size, and the mount itself. One of his lengthy letters details as follows. Nocturne Cremorne lights entirely too murky and dark. The fur jacket, too dark. Mr. Orchard's nocturne has a blemish, white spot by the boats. This has to be got rid of in the negative. Mrs. Leland's nocturne might be clearer, and the Carlyle should be much fairer in the printing. He eliminated the text that he had initially planned for the pamphlet, but still printed one sentence beside the table of contents. Quote from the speech of the Attorney General of England made in 1878 during the libel trial against Ruskin. The Attorney General said, I do not know when so much amusement has been afforded to the British public as by Mr. Whistler's pictures. But including that statement in the book, in fact, as the very beginning of the book, so many years after the trial, after all, 1892 to 1878, 24 years have gone by, would appear, knowing Whistler and his personality, to have another meaning. The luxury artwork, completely detached from the original context, suggests that Whistler sarcastically intended that the comment be perceived as admiration for his art. Amusement, admiration, for him it was the same. In the photographs, Whistler was seeking, quote, the true rendering of his paintings and the, quote, completeness of those works. He actually said, while signing the albums in 1893, I think the photographs are really very, very satisfactory, and the proofs, as far as I have seen in signing them, charming. He tried to maintain his assertion of the aesthetic value inherent in the photographs and wanted to present them as if they were original works of art, his own original works of art. His oeuvre had shifted significantly from large oil paintings to graphic works on paper after he went bankrupt in 79 because of his lawsuit against Ruskin, his failed lawsuit. And he produced small works in a variety of media, including etching, lithography, watercolor, drawing, and small oil paintings on wood. In a way, the photographs of his large canvases appear to belong to this group of small works, reflecting Whistler's artistic preferences at the time. They were meant to serve both as reproduced prints after the artist's work, and at the same time, another form of original works of art by the artist himself. After all, he signed them, and he didn't just sign them with his butterfly, he signed them with his name. However, to get to the amusing part, with typical arrogance, Whistler chose to publish entries for each of the 24, a collection of every sour review and comment he could find, including even the original Ruskin libel. The booklet is ironically subtitled The Voice of a People. Even the phrase chevalet pieces must be read ambiguously, because although chevalet is a French word that means an easel, and chevalet pieces should on the surface be interpreted as easel paintings, marines, nocturnes, and easel paintings. He could have written easily, easel paintings. The word also refers to a medieval Spanish instrument of torture. So I was fortunate to, as I say, to recently acquire a group of 10 of these fully signed first edition photos and a fine original copy of this booklet, which I'm going to show you now in the camera. You can see more or less what it looks like. Very small, very carefully done by Whistler to look this way. This is what he intended. And as you open the book, you see many, many, many comments, 24, more than 24. Each of the 24 paintings is remarked upon by two, three, four different commentators. So in the book as well is a photograph. If you want to, please go. We did go to the next photograph, which is that of Thomas Carlyle. Again, I'll show you the size of the piece itself. It's quite good size. They're going to frame beautifully for archival purposes. They will be archivally mounted and at least and possibly framed. And uh, the and so Carlyle, interesting. Carlyle actually visited Whistler's studio and saw the famous painting Whistler's Mother. We all know it. We've seen it on postcards. And quoting Whistler, he said, Carlyle liked the simplicity of it. The old lady sitting with her hands in her lap and said he would be painted. And he came one morning soon, and he sat down, and I had the canvas ready, and my brushes and palette. And Carlyle said, and now, Mon, fire away. Imagine what that was like. A fellow, scholar Kegler appreciated Ruskin and Carlyle's relationship, which is worth noting in this conversation, because his influence on Ruskin was enormous, was powerful, sustained. And in large part, Ruskin's shift of emphasis from artistic to social problems was prompted and encouraged by his older friend. Whistler was also a friend of Carlyle and lived not far from Carlyle in London. All of Carlyle's social pronouncements, which occupied the greater part of his literary life, were colored strongly. I mean, Ruskin's social pronouncements colored strongly by Carlyle. This indebtedness Ruskin freely admitted many times in his works and letters, and where he went beyond Carlyle, as he often did, he viewed himself as a disciple, attempting to find the means by which his acknowledged master's doctrine could be put into practice. It's interesting to read the density of Carlyle's writings and understand what kind of person Whistler and Ruskin befriended. Um, Ruskin actually called Carlyle Papa, and his father having died when he was a fairly young man, the paterfamilias figure of Carlyle was also critical. And Carlyle writes in a kind of archaic way, call ye that a society where there is no longer any social idea extant? Not so much as the idea of a common home, but only of a common overcrowded lodging house, where each isolated, regardless of his neighbor, turned against his neighbor, clutches what he can get and cries mine, and calls it peace. Because in the cut-purse and cutthroat scramble, no steel knives, but only a far cunninger sort can be employed, where friendship, communion has become an incredible tradition, incredible in the sense of not credible. And your holiest sacramental supper is a smoking tavern dinner with cook for evangelist, where your priest has no tongue but for plate licking, and your high guides and governors cannot guide, but on all hands hear it passionately proclaimed, laissez-faire, leave us alone of your guidance. Such light is darker than darkness. Eat you your wages and sleep. I won't go on and read the rest, but you can read it and it's in the recording. But you see how powerfully Ruskin regarded Carlyle and how the social activism and social conscience and conscience were part of Carlyle's makeup. Thus, Whistler's friendship with him is suggestive of Whistler's own sense of the community. And we now go on to someone who has a very profound sense of community and is also related to Ruskin as a student. She, in fact, went to Oxford, the Slade School at Oxford, when Ruskin was first professor there. So let us go on now to the next slide of a woman who is just beginning to be remembered. She was shown 3 years ago at the University of Delaware and actually at the Crocker Museum in Sacramento and the St. Petersburg Museum. with a show about a retrospective exhibition of both her and her husband's work. So in 18, in her husband was a very important arts and crafts ceramist, stained glass designer, William Friend de Morgan, and Evelyn, born in 1855 to a very wealthy family, was an innovative female artist in Britain in the late 19th, early 20th centuries who defied gender expectations there at that time. She forged a professional career somehow and gained enormous recognition over the 50 years she worked as an artist in Britain, but was lost to art history and is just now being understood. The first exhibition ever in the United States took place only 3 years ago. So who was she? Let's have a look at the next slide, and you'll see Evelyn and her husband, William. The exhibition catalog has a wonderful paragraph about her and her beginnings. Her family straddled the upper middle class and aristocracy. Her father, a London lawyer and Queen's Counsel. Her mother, a descendant of the first Earl of Leicester. Her artistic inclinations evident early on. But despite family resistance, she insisted on pursuing an artistic career, helped by her uncle, earlier Pre-Raphaelite painter John Rodham Spencer Stanhope, 1829 to 1908. Uncle Roddy, she called him. He had experienced similar opposition to his career choice. But in 1873, age 18, Evelyn was accepted at the Slade and met Ruskin, who was teaching. It offered one of the very few opportunities for women to receive artistic training and offered a rigorous program focused on drawing from the figure. In fact, most interesting to me, that female students in London at the Slade were permitted to draw from the live model years in advance of conditions here in America. Because in 1886, you may all know, some of you do know, that Akins was dismissed from teaching at the Pennsylvania Academy for ripping away a loincloth, the loincloth of a male model in class. Extraordinary, but not in London. Evelyn's education was further enormously enhanced through continental travel with her uncle, gaining access to works of art of the early Italian Renaissance because her uncle and her family wintered in Florence. And several copies that are extant of Renaissance paintings confirm her close study during this period in images like Flora. Next slide, please. Oh, yes.
We're on the
Sorry, it's on the right-hand side. Sorry, I was looking at the left. We see her borrowing from Sandro Botticelli's Primavera. She actually began a little bit before the Grosvenor show at the Dudley Gallery, a real small gallery, an outpost of avant-garde art and early career artists. We would call it emerging artists today. In 1877 was the Grosvenor. That was where the aesthetic movement showed its work. Um, so they were committed, Evelyn and her husband, to three important causes: spiritualism, common in the Victorian era, and early efforts of the women's suffragist movement, and then toward the end of their lives, to pacifism in response to the huge devastation of the First World War. As well, the economic disparity of the era distressed both of them. Here is Evelyn's worship of Mammon on the screen, showing the god of worldliness from the New Testament, depicted as a giant stone statue holding a bag of gold or coins, approached by a female desperately clutching his knee, begging. It's fascinating that she was a wealthy woman. She had a comfortable upbringing, began to question, despite everything she had everything anybody could wish for in material wealth. But she expressed doubt. Something about her emerged. She was influenced aesthetically by Watts, George Frederick Watts, briefly by Edward Burne-Jones, but also by Roddy, whom she often visited in Florence. And there she really developed a love of Quattrocento art, polishing her craft by copying as well in London from old master paintings at the National Gallery. Religious, spiritual-minded, troubled by the effects on society of England's developing industrialization, She was, in this, like so many of the second generation of Pre-Raphaelites, indebted to the magisterial and voluminous writing of the profound British polymath John Ruskin, one of my heroes. William Morris and other members of this later second generation of Pre-Raphaelites in their arts and crafts movement derived fundamental ideas and took enormous energy from Ruskin's efforts, disdaining so-called art that strayed from a formula of heart, hand, and mind. This is Ruskin's formula. And again, Ruskin, in the essay Storm Cloud of the 19th Century, is prescient, powerful, a didactic assault against the destruction of the environment, one of the first screeds by a public intellectual to observe what is now universally proclaimed by scientists as the inconvenient truth of potentially catastrophic climate change due to industrial waste. Next slide, please. This is a second De Morgan drawing. It's the first De Morgan drawing we acquired long before we knew anything about her. It just appealed to me. I saw it way up in the upper left of a small auction gallery here in LA. And it came with a label intact on the back of Julian Hartnell's gallery, a specialist in Pre-Raphaelite art. And I looked up the gallery phone number. I called him and I spoke to him. And he said, my goodness, what a wonderful find. A trouvaille, another trouvaille. And he congratulated me. It's colored chalk on very dark paper, again, like the masterpiece we're going to look at shortly. And it seemed to me to be a study related, next slide, please, to the crouching figure, bottom right, in the painting that is in the De Morgan Foundation, Daughters of the Mist. If you want to toggle back to the drawing and take a look at it, take a visual picture of the gesture, the knees raised, the arm down, go back to the drawing, the painting, Daughters of the Mist, and look at the lower right figure. And it seems to me to be related. It isn't a direct study. It's a lovely drawing. And we thought it would fit nicely in a small collection of drapery studies that we have been making. Next slide, please. Including a 1910 masterpiece by the Hungarian artist Adolf Jeremy Hirschel. We then realized that De Morgan was connected to the Pre-Raphaelites and to our hero, John Ruskin, and didn't know that an exhibition was brewing, nor that her work was considerably rare, considerably undervalued. Now, the great drawing about which this discussion centers. Please, next slide. Then this drawing came along, winging its way actually from London to the Master Drawings Fair in Manhattan. It caught my attention in Agnew's gallery advertisement. Here, housed in its original frame, was something called Cupidity and Blindness, chasing joy from the city, how Ruskinian. Executed circa 1892 toward the close of the 19th century, closer to 1893, this amazing drawing is an allegory depicting material greed. Cupidity is a female figure who holds under one arm tightly a basket of jewels. She's wearing a dazzling gown. She holds on to the robe of a male figure walking ahead of her, representing blindness. And in Evelyn's mind, blindness was not physical blindness, but blindness to spirituality, blindness to sensitivity, blindness to social responsibility and community. This figure in turn reaches aggressively toward a winged female angel representing joy, whose arms gesture, whose entire body rears back defensively against the approach of this pair of vices. The background city is drawn in minimal strokes of charcoal. A small group of dogs to the lower right is barely legible, allowing the three figures in gold to really dominate the composition and come into high sculptural relief. The entire drama is in powerful motion as the personification of the vices drive the angel of joy away from the city, lightly sketched behind them. I thought about this drawing looking for another hand in mind that compares because of his inspiration from Italian 15th century masters, and that was Pietro Annigoni. You might look him up. He's really worth looking at. Very far from a lot of the work being done today that calls itself art. Anyway, the mid-19th century idea in England for working, let's go back to yes, working in gold on dark paper was conceived by Burne-Jones, who had been enchanted and inspired by a medieval book of hours with deep purple ink and gold illumination. He began creating these gold drawings from the early 1860s, but kept them in his studio. He really held on to them, as did De Morgan. 14 of the 17 are in her foundation. 22 years Burne-Jones' junior, she, with other young hopefuls, visited his studio in the 1870s when she was at the Slade seeking advice, and almost surely on one of these visits she encountered these gold drawings. But De Morgan developed her own spectacular technique. A written account of the exact formula is lost. But it seems almost certain that she initially worked in what is called shell gold, a commercially available 22-karat gold pigment commonly used for manuscript illumination. And it took its name from the mussel shells in which it was packaged. And this was before dry cakes of the gold pigment were available from a man named Charles Roberson from the 1890s on. And it must be she was one of the first clients of Roberson's uh, dry gold cakes. In fact, Roberson is still in business in London. C. Roberson. We can speculate, though, that De Morgan would have had to grind pellets of this dry cake to a powder, then mix it with water and gum arabic or egg tempera to achieve a wet medium, a paint. But she had also to create another set of tools, pencils or crayons of gold. The wet paint allowed her to create a range of textures like the lush folds of the robes, the fabric, and the angel's delicately feathered wings. But the crayons were required to execute details. Both were always employed on dark gray or dark brown paper. We actually know about two sources for the paper, a French manufacturer, Canson and Montgolfier. These sheets were ideal for the light-catching qualities of gold, shimmering out of the dark. Working in the medium is known to have been a painstaking process. To Morgan's friend, it's written and it's recorded, Emily Barrington noted that, quote, in De Morgan's method, no erasures could ever be made. The artist has to do each stroke correctly in the first instance. This gives us an idea of the concentration required, explaining why perhaps drawings in gold are almost unique to Burne-Jones and De Morgan. They were experimental, tricky, difficult, and obviously costly. The great care De Morgan expended on these works reflects more than the difficulties of mere facture, more than fascination with the innovative medium. She must have known that Paracelsus, the late 15th, early 16th century Swiss-Austrian Renaissance alchemist and philosopher, considered gold to be the color of salvation. So working her humanist iconography in gold had deeper meaning and spiritual dimension, even though it is ironically associated with a measure of wealth held by those who were blind to the spiritual dimension she was depicting. De Morgan seduces us in this spectacular, beautiful drawing, but it's an aesthetic Trojan horse, a manifesto against the disastrous impact of greed and pervasive insensitivity to empathy on modern life in the London that De Morgan saw firsthand. Industrialization was emerging in her lifetime. Ruskin commented on it profusely. She was deeply opposed to poverty and desperation that was caused by the craven behavior of industrialist bankers, politicians grabbing at wealth and power, regardless of consequences to others. Ruskin and Dickens, of course, the most cogent English critics writing about the deprivations of the working class and their degradation. Now, the drawing was indeed a study for a later oil in the De Morgan Foundation, one of the many paintings in which the artist explored the idea of wealth as a barrier to spiritual being. Next slide. Yeah, there it is. I don't know if you can see it in this resolution, but now the figure of cupidity, of greed, wears a crown, which is an obvious and explicit rebuke to the monarchy and the peerage. And moreover, she is chained literally to the wrist, by the wrist, to the wrist of the figure of blindness, shackled, and there's a kind of literalism there. And I think, frankly, if you go back to the drawing just for a moment and compare, make a kind of screenshot for yourself. The exquisiteness of this drawing compared to the highly finished painting. Let's go back to the painting, uh, which is now rendered in, for me, distracting Technicolor. The group of dogs fully resolved and distracting. Sure, the richness of color and all is reminiscent of other Pre-Raphaelite painters, but who were De Morgan's colleagues and mentors. But it's my view that, now let's go back to the drawing, that the drawing has an austere narrative strength and conviction, telling a moral story without the decorative embellishments of the painting, and it thus gains moral authority. Next slide, please. Our drawing is one of only 17 known by De Morgan in gold. Next slide. And other than two drawings, Victoria Dolorosa, which is in the Leighton House Museum. Next slide. And another that appeared on the market, sold also by Agnew's. No, the other way. Another drawing that was sold by Agnew's. Next one. Next slide. Oh, wait, maybe it's on the same page. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking
Off
at,
to the right, I think.
I'm not looking at the right thing. Sorry about that. Um, Also sold by Agnew's and to the Art Institute of Chicago 6 years ago. All the other 14 drawings are in the foundation. Blindness and cupidity chasing joy from the city stands as a testament to De Morgan's unique artistic vision, technical prowess, and it encapsulates her dual role as a gifted, socially conscious artist, pioneering woman in the late 19th and early 20th century art world. Evelyn's family, the Pickerings, left her well off. Uh, she and her husband lived in a 10-bedroom mansion on the Thames, and they often wintered in Florence. Let us recall, too, that Ruskin was heir to an enormous fortune and inherited in 1864, something like $30 million in 2025 dollars in London in 1864, imagine. This was derived from his father's sherry importing company, Ruskin Telford, the largest in England and in business with the great Spanish maker Pedro Domecq. I regard their accomplishment and their moral authority with respect and accord them the term noblesse oblige. De Morgan, Ruskin, and the later Pre-Raphaelites generally combine the values of education, intelligence, courage, and empathy above all, qualities which, if we had a critical mass of individuals sharing those qualities, might create a tipping point on this planet. How utterly unlike the ruling class in the United States today, where the degenerate, feral imbecile who leads this nation seems to rule. Cupidity and blindness are yet again driving joy from our cities. If we have time, I wouldn't mind reading some of the very critical comments that Whistler enjoyed collecting and sharing with his public.
Do we have time?
Do we have time?
Sure.
Okay, great. So um, I will do that. And this is from F. Wedmore, an author of a book, The Four Masters of Etching. And just again, talking about the exhibition and the nocturne. In some of the nocturnes, the absence not only of definition, but of gradation, would point to the conclusion that they are but engaging sketches. In them, we look in vain for all the delicate differences of light and hue which the scenes depicted present. And Symphony in White is described by Hamerton, a very important art historian, in the Saturday Review. It is not precisely a symphony in white. One lady, oops, sorry, I just skipped by chance. Hold on. Oh dear, going the wrong way. Okay. One lady has a yellowish dress and brown hair and a bit of blue ribbon. The other has a red fan. There are flowers and green leaves. There is a girl in white on a white sofa, but even this girl has reddish hair. And of course, there's the flesh color of the complexions. And then he goes on in the Athenaeum. No, the Athenaeum reports, Mr. Whistler appears as eccentrically as ever. Art is not served by freaks of resentment. We hold him deeply to blame that these figures are badly drawn. Going on, taste, which is mind working in art. I think that's a very good definition of taste, by the way. Mind working in art would, even if it could at all conceive them, utterly reject the vulgarities of Mr. Whistler with regard to form, and never be content with what suffices him in composition. And then we have Ruskin making an observation, which is quite general. Painting or art generally as such, with all its technicalities, difficulties, and particular ends, is nothing but a noble and expressive language, invaluable as the vehicle of thought, but by itself nothing. But of course, Whistler would have disagreed. For him, Impressionism, if you will, or tonalism was in and of itself something to be desired. The Knowledge magazine. We're not sure, but that it would be something like insult to our readers to say more about these quote unquote things. They must surely be meant in jest. But whether the public have chiefly to thank Mr. Whistler or the managers of the Grosvenor Gallery for playing them, this sorry joke we do not know nor greatly care. We have Nocturne in blue and gold, the old Battersea Bridge, lent by Robert H.C. Harrison, Esquire, in Life magazine in London, not Our Life magazine. His Nocturne in blue and gold, number 3, might have been called, with a similar confusion of terms, a farce in moonshine with half a dozen dots. I wonder he wasn't sued. And let me go on to the next page. The word impressionist has come to have a bad meaning in art. Visions of Whistler come before you when you hear it. Such visions are not of the best possible augury, for who loves a nightmare? Like the landscape art of Japan, they are harmonious decorations, and a dozen or so of such engaging sketches placed in the upper panels of a lofty apartment would afford a justifiable and welcome alternative even to noble tapestries or Morris wallpapers. The Daily Telegraph. Mr. Whistler has whole-length portraits, or rather the shadows of people, shapes suggestive of good examples of portraiture when completed. They are exhibited to illustrate a theory peculiar to the artist. One is entitled An Arrangement in black and brown. The Oracle. We are threatened with a Whistler exhibition. The periodical inflictions with which the gentleman tries the patience of a long-suffering public generally take some fantastic form to attract attention. It's an evidence of the painter's worldly acuteness that this should be so, for public attention may be drawn by such outbursts of eccentricity to such work as would never impress sensible people on its merit. Well, I think that's sort of enough of the uh, the readings from this, unless you would like me to go on with a few more.
That seems pretty good. I think
Shall we end
you've done
there?
him justice, Stuart.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Very
Uh,
good.
I know. I think some people will have some questions, which we want to afford the opportunity for here. And I just wanted to quickly mention that I'm so impressed that you collect in the field of drapery. It seems so wonderfully esoteric, but it's something that is in so much art, and I just never thought of that as a collecting field. So congrats on finding something that can be so revealing, no pun intended.
Very good one. Good one.
But let's go ahead and open this up for any questions. And I think Kathleen had one earlier, unless that was a mistake, and I believe Gabriel may have one here, our executive director. But let's see if we have any hands up or if somebody wants to just jump in.
Sure. Oh, Carol, you're muted. You're muted, Carol. Carol, unmute yourself. Carol, unmute yourself. There you are. Unmute.
Thank you.
There you go.
I hate to be the one to ask a question that's just asking you to repeat something. It's just so interesting. But I just wondered if you'd repeat what the remark was that Ruskin made of Whistler that led to the lawsuit. What was it?
What was the cause of the lawsuit?
Yes, if you can do it quickly. It was a comment, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's no problem at all. For Mr. Whistler's own sake, no less than for the protection of the purchaser, Sir Coots Lindsay, ought not have admitted works into the gallery in which the ill-educated conceit of the artist so nearly approached the aspect of willful imposture. I have seen and heard much of Cockney impudence before now, but never expected to hear a coxcomb ask 200 guineas for flinging a pot of paint in the public's face.
Thank you. I was present on my end of the Zoom, but I do have 4 weeks of rebuilding my air conditioning going on, and I was distracted for that moment. Thank you so much, Stuart.
Sure, of course, yeah, absolutely.
It's so interesting to hear anything against Whistler because I have not studied the subject, but I just know I've just always adored his portraits. So
I feel like the same complaint was lodged against Jackson Pollock, no?
yeah, well, I can imagine more people saying things about Pollock, but Whistler's portraits, oh my.
Let me turn to Beverly to recount the story of the first Jackson Pollock that entered the LA County Museum with James Burns, the director of modern art when the museum was in the exposition park. Go ahead, Bev. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. No. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Hey.
Just to cite, that's fine. Hi, everyone. Just to cite the relativity of time, our friend James Burns, who in the 60s was just before, as the museum was transitioning to where, well, currently is being rebuilt, he was the curator, and he brought to the museum 2 works of art which he would like them to acquire. And one was a Joseph Albers for $600. And the other was a Jackson Pollock for $400. And the committee met, he could not be present, and they came back to him and they said, we've accepted your interest and we will purchase these works of art. However, we will not hang them in the public galleries, but we will hang them in the study session for educational purposes. How that's changed. So how we accept things is sometimes quite different.
And it must be said too, there's a certain context to Ruskin's comments. Both personal and kind of general. The Grosvenor Gallery was just opening. Ruskin had supported it financially, in part, and which is why he mentions the gallery director in his remarks. It was really meant to be a gallery for emerging artists. So people like Evelyn de Morgan, women artists. The part of the exhibition for this particular exhibition in 1877 was the work of Burne-Jones. So Burne-Jones was a disciple of Ruskin, and Ruskin had really gone to the gallery to look around, but mainly to focus on Burne-Jones's work, which he planned to write a significant review on Burne-Jones's work. So one of the things that caught Ruskin's attention right away was that Whistler was charging 3 times as much as any of the other emerging artists were charging. So Whistler was already asserting that his work was on another level as these other artistic peons. So Ruskin picked that up right away, was offended by it. So in part, I think Ruskin wanted to put Whistler in his place. Um, there were artistic issues, obviously, as well, but there were uh, these other art political kind of issues that were at work. Um,
To
and of
give you
course,
a sense of, oh, sorry.
yeah, and as Stuart mentioned, the many of the other critics had rather similar remarks to make about Whistler. Why Whistler sued Ruskin, in particular, was just because of Ruskin's authority in the art world. And if Whistler intended to make it big, as he hoped to in Britain, this would be a tremendous setback to him.
I was just going to say,
If
just
he
to
let this stand.
give you a sense of the scale of this drawing, which is behind me, I'm just going to move back and show you just how large it is.
Mm.
Uh-huh.
And that's the original frame as well.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah. So.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Stuart or anyone else here?
Who's that?
I'm going to have to just go let.
We can mute you.
We understand. We understand. Okay, no problem. Hi, Norman. Wonderful friend.
Stuart, I was struck too by your comments about De Morgan and spiritualism, thinking a bit about William Keith and his connection with some of these movements at the turn of the 20th century, and of course the Swedenborgians in San Francisco and so forth. So there were a lot of connections between these sort of more freelance spiritual movements and the art movements of the day.
One has to wonder whether there is a kind of spontaneity or simultaneity about these things, or whether it is a cyclical every so often, or is it within the nature of the cosmos to in every organism, whether maybe turtles feel the same kind of, they must have a kind of buzz as well of the cosmos. There are many new theories emerging from quantum physics of going very radical and suggesting that consciousness is it has an equivalence or an equivalent stature as space-time in figuring the physics of things, which is shattering and stimulating. James Goodwin, you must have some very interesting ideas about spiritual truth. James, can you hear me? I invite you to speak, James. Oh, okay. Okay.
I think he's trying to unmute himself.
Yes, I think maybe that could be. Yes, hi. Oh, good.
How are you?
Very well.
I've been
Thank you.
enjoying this a lot and love the Beverly's story of the Albers and the Pollock. It's interesting. But the cyclic recurrence of these issues driving joy from the city, I think is I think it's cyclic because we see throughout history that we have these recurring periods of the dominance of greed and cruelty, and it's incomprehensible to me how we as human beings tolerate the emergence of these cruel and visible forces. We see them coming, and they seem to have something inexorable about them that's just intolerable. We can't somehow rise together to defeat them when they're small. What is the text? It says, "Take ye the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for your vines have tender grapes."
Mm-hmm.
So if you catch them early, you can do something. But if they're allowed to grow, they just take us over.
Well, that invites me to my soapbox, which is very, very brief, very briefly. I've put this in front of biophysicists and sociologists and all sorts of people, and they seem to think it has some merit, that it's not a black, white, north, south, east, west, liberal, conservative, progressive issue. It's an evolutionary issue having to do with the lack of critical mass of
Yes.
individuals who are bright, who are educated, who are brave, and who are empathic and compassionate, that we just don't have actually enough of them in the 8 billion plus people on the planet to create a tipping point. And I take the critical mass metaphor from the nuclear pile. That is to say, when you lift U-235, the isotope that they use in nuclear piles, out of heavy water, H2O2, it gets hot, stays hot, and it boils water, and steam makes electricity happen with a conventional steam turbine. But we had critical mass of individuals who are smart. That's why education is so critical. So critical. And loving parents and a loving community are so critical. The encouragement to understand your place in the community is so critical. We don't have that critical mass.
No,
We
I've been reading a text. It's called the Devi Mahatmya. It's from the 9th century. And the writer is excoriating the Devi and says, who, other than in all the scriptures that require the lamp of discrimination for understanding, who, other than you, the great goddess, allows this vast ocean of egoism, this pitch black darkness?
Who indeed?
Huh?
Evolution, I think it's just we're just sort of not we're not inheriting a great evolutionary moment. Things have turned dark, but we're resisting, and maybe the midterms here in this country, for example, will bring back power to the Senate and the House on the right, the proper side.
Maybe the gold will emerge from the gray.
Ah, yes, exactly. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Tyson?
Yeah, radiantly.
That's really good.
Sorry, Stuart, something hit me while I was looking at the drawing again that you have. I wonder if Evelyn ever saw or was influenced by Ambrosio Lorenzetti's mural in Siena of Good Government in the City.
Mm.
The architecture in the background is almost a spitting image for parts of it. It's
Really,
so
what a wonderful discovery.
yeah.
Tyson, high marks.
I'd take a look at that. It was percolating in the back of my head, and I thought, yeah. And then I just now looked, and it was like, oh yeah, some of that architecture is exactly the same.
My goodness.
Tyson, why don't you put that on the chat?
Sure. Actually, here I can share it because I've got it open. If you can see it,
Oh,
some of the architecture in this area looks
right
very
here.
much like the background.
Oh, yes.
Here it is.
oh, that's for sure. Oh, I think you really are onto something.
I mean, I assume it.
Well, she had to have seen it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
My gosh, that's just terrific.
Yeah, very good.
Thematically, Stuart, she writes a little bit about this. We were just talking about, and about this, even about the Good Government mural. The kind of spiritualism she and her husband were involved in was not the seance kind of spiritualism, but was automatic writing. So they would do this kind of automatic writing. And so one of these, she collected all of the automatic writing that they had experienced over the years in a book called The Result of an Experiment. And there's a quote from that which is interesting. This is again their realization of this kind of automatic writing. You are not to think that the only reason for doing art is to make life beautiful. In reality, it teaches what it teaches is true as well as beautiful. I think the best thing to strive for is the realization that art should be harmony. The second thing is to grasp that harmony is the creative force, and discord the power of disillusion. In mortal life, harmony reigns. In evil life, discord is paramount. Out of harmony comes growth. Out of discord, death and destruction. In life on earth, growth is slain by discord, and harmony tends to fruition.
Absolutely sure.
Yeah. And what, of course, immediately, when you're thinking in terms of Ruskin, you think of in Modern Painters 5, the great section on the law of help. Government and cooperation are in all things and eternally the laws of life. Anarchy and competition eternally and in all things the laws of disillusion and death. So this is very much that.
Very resonant. Yep.
Yeah.
Parallel. Well,
Anybody have any last thoughts for Stuart?
Well, let's have harmony and joy, shall we?
Yeah.
Last thought.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
let's do it. Let's do it.
And let joy drive cupidity and blindness from the city.
Indeed.
Beautiful.
Good.
Well,
Well, we're fortunate to be able to live with these marvelous things, and I'm anticipating the delivery of a 16th century, early 16th century German engraving. I also collect ornamental engravings, which are similar to, in a way, in my mind, to drapery studies, because they're absent narrative. You can find iconographic, meanings, but there's no explicit. It's not as easy to find as a crucifixion or a resurrection or whatever else one might find in the early
Yep.
days.
Stuart, question. Do we have you seen William de Morgan's ceramics?
Occasionally, I've seen one or two, as I recall.
Mm.
I've not seen. I would love to have gone to Sacramento to see the show. I regret that I didn't get up there. Here it was.
What's it like?
What are his works like?
Uh-huh.
Well, if you know arts and crafts, pottery, you know how
Okay.
the shapes take the shapes from Art Nouveau, the decorations from the arts and crafts movement, very elegant, very colorful, a lot of iridescence, and
Mm.
yeah, it's hard to describe them personally. Maybe Norman, maybe you could describe them a little better. Unmute yourself.
What?
I'm unmuting myself, Stuart.
Okay.
When you said they're hard to describe, that is a great understatement because there is really nothing like De Morgan in ceramic history. They're extraordinary, and the subjects are extraordinary: fish and birds, and then incredible designs. They basically typically cover the surface of every pot, every dish, every tile that he produced. And they must have been expensive to produce, so it makes sense to me that she was supporting him. I don't think the sale of his pottery was supporting the whole operation at the time.
Right.
But I would urge people to just go online and take a look at pictures of the De Morgan pottery. It's remarkable material.
Great.
Power couple.
Wow, you weren't wrong. Those are wild.
That
Can you screen share? Can we see?
Yeah, I can. Just looking at, I was just scrolling through Google Images here. You can see a bunch. They're
The
Yeah.
shapes are somewhat conventional, but the decorations are anything but.
Mm.
Yes. Really impressive. Beautiful. Well, I'll let you all investigate further.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, well, that seems like a great uh, point to wrap things up. I want to thank Stuart yet again for your all of your hard research, your purchasing, you're bringing these treasures to all of us here. I thank you all for coming out to listen. Please go to our website for ruskinartclub.org for more such treasures, more unveilings. You'll also see our calendar of upcoming events there. I'm going to hand things off to our executive director, Gabriel Meyer, to go into a little bit more detail about all the art, poetry, music, and laughter coming down the pike while I deal with this giant creature. Go ahead.
Well, you're attacked by your cat. Yes, just a couple of things. First of all, again, thanking Stuart and Beverly for opening their treasure chest for us today. When Stuart first showed me the De Morgan drawing, I was just stunned, by just how extraordinary it is. This presentation will be shortly uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can recommend it to people who didn't have the good fortune to be here at www.ruskinartclub.org. In our YouTube channel, we have an archive of now 101 lectures and presentations from our past. Our next event, Thursday, July 17th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. Dr. Virginia Regain will be with us, giving us a lecture on the illuminated window. Her new book, The Illuminated Window on Stained Glass, is just out. She's a world-class scholar on stained glass and also on the conservation of historic stained glass. Among her many works and accomplishments, she wrote the guide to the Getty Museum's collection of medieval and Renaissance stained glass. So Virginia will be with us on July 17th, and we'll be sending out the notice on that. So you don't want to miss this presentation. A quick note on study sessions for those interested. We, during the year, have sometimes between 10 and 15 study sessions reading Ruskin together and discussing a particular work of Ruskin's. This year, we're spending the whole year on the Stones of Venice, all 3 volumes. We're being led in this study by the Fors Center in Venice. The great Ruskin Center that's been set up at the Foscari University in Venice. So they're leading us on this study, and we'll conclude in November. So June 28th is the next study at 8 to 9:30 a.m. early because of some other scheduling issues. And then on July 12th from 10 to 11:30, our normal time, we will continue a 2-part discussion of Ruskin's essay on St. Mark's. And we'll also be revving up our podcasts on our Ruskin Today podcast. Tyson mentioned that we have a podcast, a wide-ranging interview with Beverly and Stuart. We'll also be shortly doing an interview with Sérgio Ferro, a Brazilian architect, thinker, and social activist who has been inspired throughout his career by Ruskin's views on architecture and labor relations. So Sérgio Ferro will be an upcoming interview on our Ruskin Today podcast. So I think that's enough announcements for one evening. So we are delighted that you all could join us, and we look forward to the next time that we assemble together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tyson. Thanks, Gabriel.
Thank you.
Great.
Oh, there we